Okay, hello everybody. The recording has started, just so everybody is aware. Today's meeting is November 17th, and we have the mock meeting. I'm Christina Ramsey. I am the manufacturing program manager with DY, and I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Jeremy.
Hi everyone, Jeremy Cooper here with the Manufacturing Oversight Committee, and we have with us everyone in our normal attendance. We got Felipe and Nick and Brad and Sophie and Patrick, all our normal voting members, and of course some of our guests. And looks like we kind of have, well, going over the agenda today, things we're going to go through here. First item on here does talk about talking about the status of the manufacturer's ethics and expectation docs. If you remember, this is sort of trying to get manufacturers all to understand the things that we find good and bad behavior and what we expect of them. Also, so they can get an expectation of what things we will be really serious about and what things we expect them to manage on their own. I haven't been contributing a lot to that, but I think in channel we have been, and again, does everybody have access to it first off? Oh, that's the committee notes. Any status on that, I think, is what we're going for.
I think at this point, everyone should look at it and comment and maybe initial, that they've looked at it.
Christina, could you pop that into the chat if you don't mind? Just the doc that we're working on. Oh, never mind, or just in the committee notes. See it, thanks.
Yeah, perfect, great, yeah. Oh yeah, this is a bit more fleshed out when I had last looked at it.
Yeah, I think a lot of us added things to it.
Yeah, so I'll make certain that we chat about it on the Discord. Oh, looks like they've been sort of expired there. Any particular additions that anybody wants to call out that I'm looking through here, and this will touch in some stuff I want to add at the end of the meeting if we have time. I added to the end, and really, we're seeing a lot of push from the community to explicitly state like what role we should do to protect consumers, if any. And I think we should publish something about how we're going to do that, or who we're going to hand that off to, or what our ideal is, because I see certainly things in here which talk a lot about consumer side of fulfilling orders, and it's definitely important in the community. I want to make certain we don't overstep our bounds, and it's a lot in this doc, so appreciate everyone sort of pitching in to talk about those aspects. Other parts of this clearly are more technical administrative side, things that we expect them to do as manufacturers to uphold at least their technical side, the onboarding server, how they're going to do their mobile app, and things like that. So yeah, definitely appreciative there.
I raised my hand first, Scott.
Sorry, I'm not even monitoring. Go for it. So
yeah, there's only 9 of us. I don't know. I just did it as a formality. So do you think that we should take this doc and make it into a series, simplify it to a series of questions as an ethics doc that manufacturers should sign upon entering the network as a part of their approval?
Yeah, I do.
Yes.
I mean, the ability to police it on some of the, I mean, there's a little bit of an honor system expectation here, but I don't see there's a reason why we shouldn't ask them to sign that and at least, set the expectation in the manufacturer community.
I like the idea of them just acknowledging it, like acknowledging they've received it.
What about the fact that they are aware?
It's not a legal contract. And it cannot.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I need to chime in on the fact of like what I want to do is get this doc to place, and I think we're going to have to change some language. We talk about manufacturers must, like I think a lot of this is just finessing language. It is advised or it is recommended, because again, I want to be careful of where the mock is overstepping its mandate. That's number one. And I know we talk about these things about consumer protection. I think we covered in the town hall, like that's really not necessarily, it's not within the scope of this committee. We can talk about how we're going to surface and upfront more data that's available to the public that just better informs consumers who are making those decisions. But again, I think we need to be very, very careful about making it too much of, and like the way that I had envisioned this, where it's not necessarily actions taken by the MOC, but it's actions that can be taken by the community. It should definitely not be an agreement between the MOC and the manufacturer or DY and the manufacturer. It has to effectively be something akin to a pledge where they are receiving this, they can have, you know, an officer sign off on it, that can be available for public view. And then if, you know, the community collectively decides, hey, we want to take action and, you know, do something to punish a manufacturer that's like involved with gaming. I just want to leave that a little bit more open-ended for community to pursue punitive damages rather than the MOC specifically.
Well, you could replace the word must, the words must with shall.
Yeah,
we see that in the LoRaWAN specification a lot. They use the word shall instead of must, but potato.
Yeah, and again, like I'll send this over to DY legal for a quick review, and you know they'll understand the goals of we're not trying to create a commercial agreement between, you know, a specific party on our side. It's just more of something that, you know, allows the community to have some means to pursue because they've broken with it, you know, trust document. So I'll get some legal opinion, but I just want to get the doc to a place where we feel like collectively pretty good about at least the content, not so much of like the specific language, but just are we covering off on the topics and the areas that we want to make sure are addressed. So I would say, can we call it as a deadline of this weekend that everybody adds any other comments or edits by the weekend?
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think for me, it's all about, this is kind of maybe the first document that a manufacturer will see when joining the network. And even though we may not necessarily be in charge of some of this stuff, we can kind of set the tone and say, look, we've seen from the community, these are the things they expect from you. This is not necessarily a legal obligation from you between us and you, but here as we will be your host in some way into the network, let us introduce to you some of the standards that the community seems to hold really high. And if we tone it that way, I think it has a good chance of really not being a legal onus on the MOC, but also getting all of the points across. So I'll try to work on that toning too. And then, yeah, I think having this weekend as a deadline would be great. Is everybody cool with that? In general, it's really hard. Nick, I see some.
Yeah, I mean, I've got questions about like where do we put in the word responsibility, and where is the kind of repercussions for not doing this? So I think it's pretty, you're like defanging the whole thing if you're like, hey, let's let the community handle this. At one point, there's got to be a thing where the manufacturer sees it and they read it, and manufacturers are motivated obviously to be in business, and they see somewhere in there like, hey, if I don't follow these, sure, there's going to be some community feedback and people will stop buying the units, etc. But if I don't follow these to some extreme degree, then I lose all of the business opportunities I have. I'd like to see that in there somewhere, like, hey, this is the ultimate hammer is that you just get turned off. And I know we don't want to do that. I think
that for this initial document, I don't know if we can reach that part. I would look, that's more on a contractual basis where you have penalties if they violate something. For me, I see this document as removing plausible deniability, so that they are informed, they are aware of everything, so that we don't have a manufacturer breaking the rules and then, oops, didn't know. At least for this initial document, I think we should go more that way. Otherwise, we would be tying ourselves to contractual obligations or enforcement of the rules. And my view.
Good.
No, we cannot enforce. I mean, we're all in line, but I would just, what I would like to see is, you know, we finalize kind of the ethics expectations doc, right? Obviously they're not signing it like a contract, but they can acknowledge it. And what I would love to see is the quality manufacturers put up a web page that addresses all of the things we put in there, and they disclose. I think the number one thing that we should be driving for is disclosure and transparency for manufacturers on a lot of the questions that are coming in from the community.
Got what he got.
Yeah, I think that what we can, the way that I think we can address that as far as, you know, Nick, I hear your point on like, we don't want to take the teeth out of this, but if we include some language, again, we keep it relatively open-ended that violation of these will, the community has the right to either revoke a key or to potentially explore solutions that may block hotspots from the manufacturer. So we're kind of just leaving it open to either an action by the MOC to revoke a key, or that the community, if at some point down the road a deny list is implemented, just leaving that type of language in there that either it's going to be an action from the MOC or something from the community, but you leave it open to say like some of these actions may be taken failure to abide by these guidelines.
Yep. And maybe there's a carrot in there as well, is that like all manufacturers who abide by these guidelines get a link from DY or like some special page of like, preferred or recommended or whatever manufacturers. So it just makes it that when someone's like, hey, what do you think of this? We can say, well, go check this thing. And you'll see right away if they've abided by all of these ethics and expectations. I think there really needs to be a carrot and a stick here. And we can't just put this out there and be like, hey, you really should have read this. I mean, Philippe, I totally get it. This takes away plausible deniability. I'd like to hammer that home and also make it so that manufacturers are encouraged to do it and not just discouraged from not doing it.
Nick, the part of evaluate, we even talked in a previous meeting, I think it was addressed in the town hall briefly, to have a quality oversight that would focus on how good manufacturer responds to support requests, their delivery times, etc. Yes, I totally believe, and I'm forward on having that kind of entity doing recommendations or a quality seal, but not the MOC. It's just that we should be careful not to tie ourselves into that. At least it's the idea I have of what was agreed.
Brad, I see you nodding vigorously.
All right, well, I think we've kind of at least agreed on points that we want to really attack on this. I don't think we need to beat it too much. Just looking at one more thing. So clearly we can see there's some things in here which are like quality stuff that we really want them to adhere to, but we don't have a lot of teeth, we feel, and others which are directly in here about our existing rules. So I think we can aim to have something we can all agree on by this weekend. It does require people put in a little time to work on it, and I'm putting you all on the spot for basically 3 week, American weekdays until then. So are we done with this one?
There's a decision, Jeremy, that I put in the
Yeah,
delete it or ask us to vote.
Is there?
Right here.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. Okay, sure. Oh boy. Okay. Are we all? Let's just simply say, do we resolve that we do want to have some sort of document like this? I'm for it.
Yep.
1, 2,
Yes.
3, 4. That is enough to officially say yes, we are for it. Okay. Oh yeah, that was the decision. Very good. Thank you.
Well,
All right.
actually, the part of the decision is, do the manufacturers sign off on it?
Yes.
I
Acknowledge.
think they
at
sign
least.
to acknowledge it, like Scott said, but it's not probably a binding legal contract, right?
Okay, sign that they have read it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Again, by the way,
I'm
I'm
good with
going to take, when we get to the final version of this, I will share this with legal on our side, just to make
Yeah.
sure we're very, very clear that we are not creating any appearance, or if there's any misinterpretation that this is a commercial agreement. This is
Right. Well, it'll be very interesting too, because there's not necessarily another co-signing party. It's not like we as each individual MOC members are signing it.
Yep.
So it'll be a letter from us as a group, but not necessarily signed by us. But yeah, appreciate you checking with DY's council to see if there's any problems with us as a group doing that, Scott.
Yeah, I think it's MOC rep. It's just simply the MOC representing the Helium, participants of the Helium community.
Yeah.
But I'll check on what's the right way to frame that.
Okay. Cool. All right. I think we all agree that it'll be something that they sign, something that they read. So, all right. Help me out here a little bit. Whether something's a status item or decision item, whether they go separately. And we've got this big one, which is the questions from the,
I'm gonna just move this down to the decisions.
great.
And so I'm also gonna put all vote yes.
Yeah, thank you.
And I guess, Christina, normally this, I'm just gonna do this now because I'm used to doing it, but this is you.
Got it.
Just taking light notes in the,
Yeah, I don't mind doing it. I just don't want to be stepping on your toes here.
you know.
Yeah,
And sometimes I'll end up doing it too if I see
Yeah.
it's not being done. Everybody can feel free. Okay. So this is a big one, at least status wise. We still have some sort of outstanding questions from the town hall, and I really think they sort of fit into us trying to enumerate what the role of the mock is. And the community really wants to see someone or something at least address publicly manufacturers who haven't been doing a good job. And I think we all agree there are manufacturers who haven't been doing really great with their customer relations, but the community does not seem to understand where our role is as really as a technical standard setting organization. And I think we can help them out by at least coming to some public statement about what our role is and why. Yes, we do hear all of these complaints and we're not numb to them, but the community needs to find some way outside of the mock to do it. And we can start saying, hey, here's some ideas we thought about. Maybe the manufacturers can band together and have a there was such a really good idea you had, Scott, about
Actually, I think it was actually Brad's idea.
yeah.
And look, I think that we can say that it's outside the purview, it's outside the mandate of the mock, but a couple potential ideas that we would love to see, and then we can just kind of recommend whether that's either a committee that's run by the manufacturers to self-police, a impartial and neutral reviewing platform that's run by the community. We could throw out a couple things as just kind of like we're leading them down the path, but effectively those are just suggestions and recommendations. We wouldn't I don't think that we should be like hard and fast on like go do this. It's just very simply here's
Right.
something that
So
might work.
my idea is that we should just come up with a set of things that we think might work, but it's not us telling everyone what will work, but that we do see all of the outpouring of these complaints, and we're not numb to them, but it's not something we feel comfortable handling ourselves, and that we think there's room for a lot of community solutions here.
Well, again, I think that part of it is like, let's make sure we don't skip on the logic of it's not that we just don't feel comfortable. I think like item one is that it's outside of what was defined within HIP 19 is the mandate for the for this committee. And two, again, efforts to decentralize where you don't necessarily want to have a technical organization weighing in on like the commercial side or the like consumer protections. It's just that's too much power under one committee potentially. But again, that's maybe just the point of view is. Because I don't want people to think it's not like we're like trying to, it's not that this committee is trying to like skirt additional responsibility. It's actually for the sake of like one, the original mandate, and two, trying to make sure we're kind of spreading authority through different parts of the network.
I'm just writing down some of the key points here.
Dig it. This is kind of an ethical question and maybe a recusing question, but would it be inappropriate if a member of this committee kept a page on their website that detailed whether or not manufacturers were adhering to that document that we just had up? So the kind of ethics and whatever it was, responsibilities thing we just looked at. Or is that like, hey, we don't want that to be a committee member that runs that page, that should be someone else?
Nick, are you talking about the committee member running the page where the community can share, or the committee member doing reviews by himself of the
Yeah, I mean, what I'm talking about, to be super clear, is putting up something on the GK site where it's like, hey, this is a page, here are the mock kind of responsibilities, and here is a chart where anyone can publicly look and see like, okay, the responsibility is, not to do this, and the manufacturer has or has not done it. It's a green check mark or a red X. Like it like a simple way to really quickly look and say like, oh, this guy looks like they're totally on board, or looks like this manufacturer is missing some pieces.
So maybe can I just, I don't, because I think what you're saying is a great idea. I think, but there's really two very specific parts of it. So is such a thing, would it be welcomed by the Helium community? I totally think it would be. And I think I think hopefully we will know there'd be no disagreement that this committee would have no objection to having something like that evolve. I think the specific question is if a sitting committee member is running that website, and this comes back to maybe some earlier discussion that we had, is what are the boundaries for sitting committee members? Like, and I expect that you're going to be on the committee for a period of time. So maybe if you did this before you joined the committee, while you're on the committee, you kind of suspend it, or there's just there's a little bit of a gray zone. But coming back to, it'd be great to see the manufacturers themselves, start to self-organize and start to produce some community-friendly collateral on, showing what's different about their products, what their policies are. I think it could come from the manufacturers coming together, or it could come from an independent party. And I think there's a great website opportunity for somebody to go develop a website that's like, the consumer reports of Helium Network hardware, right, or something like that.
Yeah, but I do think it might be a touch problematic to have a sitting committee member running that type of content.
I think it would be problematic if the city committee member definitely did it while they were sitting on the committee for the first time.
Yeah.
In the future, hopefully, maybe there's lots of tools like this. Maybe it would become less of a concern. But I agree with you, Scott.
I believe I saw a community grant application for this.
Is there a grant application? Oh, I gotta go back and check. I don't remember if there's.
Well, someone forwarded it to me. So I don't normally look at the grants, but.
Yeah, I think that this kind of page, it's great. It's what will allow even newcomers to have an idea of where to go, what to avoid possible pitfalls, or what to at least be informed what to expect when ordering from a certain vendor. Having that content in any way tied directly to the mock, it's what worries me.
So let me
that's
ask
actually
this
why I'm
then.
a little.
Oh, go ahead.
No, so that's actually why I'm worried about doing anything as a grant, because I just have to be very careful about what the specifications are, because again, for DY to be too closely involved to something like that, it's a slippery slope. So maybe that's for me to figure out.
Yeah, let's try to maybe focus it down to like decisions we need to make. That way we're not stuck debating this over and over again. Let's see. So this actually really wasn't a decision item. So just acknowledging, with this is a huge thing in front of us that a lot of people were really still unclear, and I think we can publish more. It can be maybe a part about this ethics and expectations doc when we publish that and put that out. Just know that I'm just seeing an incredible amount of frustration of people who don't understand or are not. Yeah, I would just say don't understand the mock's role. They see the word oversight and they think, oh, you're in charge of everything about a manufacturer, and it's a drag on anybody who participates here. I'm sure you all get pestered constantly if you're in the public.
Sorry to interrupt. I actually think that Jeremy, you raise a good point, because what we probably should do within this exercise is probably rebrand the mock. Might not be good to say manufacturing oversight. We might want to talk about as far as if it's technical hotspot technical oversight, or just kind of thinking what might be a better way to rebrand it. Because if it's just purely manufacturing oversight, that again, the perception of a newcomer is that it's related to all things in terms of consumer protection and whatnot. So maybe there's a branding issue here too.
Can we use a manufacturer admission committee, because it's for allowing them to join? We keep tabs, okay, if anything is broken, but we basically audit the devices and allow them to start working the network, right?
I think technical compliance committee is a more accurate.
Yeah, go Brad.
Right. I mean, that's really what we're doing. We're making sure that the devices meet the minimum technical compliance required to participate on the Helium network, but we're not going beyond that. We don't make specific really performance assessments, feature assessments, It's really about the authentication mechanism that they use and that they've met the minimum RF requirements to participate in my mind.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Manufacturers Technical Compliance Committee. It's ringing a bell.
I mean, it seems like a
Mouthful.
really big step to do like in one meeting, but I'm fully on board with us like changing the name to help fix some of these things. I would appreciate any suggestions of whether you think this would really help the problem. Obviously, people are going to call it whatever they're going to call it, and
I think
but
that
definitely
is-
this helps.
I think it's a good thing to kind of work through this exercise, but I'd love to be able to, like when we put out this the document, the agreement, I think all these things, and where we're trying to help coach the community into shifting where this responsibility lies, that's I think the good time to talk about how we're rebranding the mock to this to more accurately reflect the nature of the work that's being done. And here's these other areas, there's where we see this being handed off within either a community or another committee that's, again, manufacturer self-policing. So I think that all can be done in a similar shot.
Yeah. Okay. I think that really
Simultaneously.
solve some of the wounds. We're gonna have to. This is going to be a topic that just comes up over and over again until that community bootstrap or whatever is going on. So we just keep track of it and be aware of it and be prepared to answer it in public always. Why do you do this and why do you not do other things? Cool. So I don't think we have to necessarily decide now, but it is a big thing to think about. And with that, I'd like to table that part and go on to some of the other technical stuff. Cool. So the next one on here is auditing light hotspots. Sophie, you want to describe it more? I mean, this is a big issue.
And I think this should be really fast. I just thought everyone should be aware that we've been asked by a couple of people if they can just, if they've already been audited for their full hotspot, if that can either pass for their light hot, if that will pass their light hotspot. My answer has been no. Just totally different firmware, totally and some of them are like, oh, but the hardware is the same. So if everyone's in agreement, I think no, and I've been saying no.
Yeah, no.
Yep, no.
Okay, great.
That's so weird because I've always thought the opposite.
Hang on.
What?
Sorry, go ahead, Jeremy.
I've always thought that any full hotspot is way overpowered to be a light hotspot. And from Helium's point of view, especially on their documentation page about light hotspots and data only hotspots, you look through all the milestones. Part of their explanation of light hotspots is that the hardware requirements are so much less strict that you can go with so much smaller hardware that anything that's approved as a full hotspot is almost guaranteed to function perfectly well as a light hotspot. So we need to confront that language.
Then we probably need to rebrand the hardware audit as a hardware and security audit.
Okay, Brad, you have something important, it seems like.
Yeah. Well, on one of our calls a while back, we actually talked about what changes would require a new audit. And I think if we can go find those notes, I thought it was fairly well thought out. And I think we need to refer back to those notes and stick to that. I think one of the changes that was there was like a major firmware change, which I would consider the migration to light hotspots being a major firmware change.
I actually don't think that made it in. I'm gonna post what the.
No, but I think it should be added. But I don't think it the major firmware. It was the processor, if reduced memory.
The
I'm
RF,
gonna put
right,
it.
all those types of things. So just I think maybe we just review back to that. We can edit that list and go from there.
There it is.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, it's firmware. So just talking technically, what's going to happen in a light hotspot? It's typically using the same exact firmware, and instead of running the Docker miner container, they're going to run a Rust compiled executable. And apparently part of this design is it will be self-updating. So it even removes a lot of the OTA requirements out of there, or it has the capability.
It's an option. The manufacturers can choose to turn that on or off, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So, and just reminding everyone of like the goals of the network, the idea is that the light hotspots are going to solve a lot of the problems that we have with the network right now. We're barely able, well, looks like there's some tuning that was able to make it so hotspots can follow the chain now, but It's designed to be a quick swap out and hopefully very seamless. In fact, huge thing. So I do want to make certain we don't put in additional barriers. Recognize that this is a really good opportunity to get the network running very smoothly. If we think an audit is really necessary, go for it. But it's quite possible it's not necessary because very few things are changing, just the firmware, the
So
part of the firmware.
let's unwind this a little bit more, right? So because there's a lot of devil in the detail. If somebody has a full miner, I think my understanding is, right, all miners are going to be updated to the light miner in the future. So if you have a manufacturer who has a current product, model number 001A, and it's a full miner, they obviously will be able to do a firmware upgrade to make that product a light miner in the future. Okay. So if they're going to continue to sell that product, model number 0001A, I don't necessarily think they have to go through a new hardware audit. And at some point in the future, that product may ship with the miner light because the full miner is deprecated. Make sense so far?
Yep.
But if a manufacturer is going to release a new product with a new model number that's targeted to be a light miner, then they have to go back through the hardware audit, even if the underlying circuit boards are the same. But I think a lot of the manufacturers are moving to a much lower capability processor with their light miners. So I think it's going to trigger the audit, and based on multiple criteria anyway. Does that
Right, I
make sense
agree.
to everybody?
Yeah, but I thought we were saying, oh, if they're going to take existing hardware and call it a light miner, do they need to be re-audited? And it's not triggering a hardware change.
Yeah, so I think the distinction I have is it the same product? Like, I think we have to look at model number and product and how they're marketing it. If it's the same model number and they're going to firmware upgrade all those units anyhow to light miner, then I agree, it doesn't necessarily need an audit. But if they're going to enter the market with a new model number as a light miner, it's a new product, therefore it needs to trigger an audit.
Yeah, I'm in general agreement about that. Like if it's a new hardware model, the rules are pretty clear. It requires an audit. I do want to address a possible hole though, that we do need to make certain that all manufacturers are ready for the light transition. I'd like to see something like a self-certification at the very least. That reduces a bit of the bureaucratic stuff, especially on our end. But we need to check with Helium Inc. to see what they've talked about to the existing legacy manufacturers. Say, how have you been communicating the light status? Coco, if you're listening, definitely use your help about what's been communicated, and if you guys have any plans back when you were in charge of everything, how you're going to communicate and do this handover to light hotspots if there is a more technical document. You might not be ready to be put on the spot.
I caught the second half of that after you said my name. But what I think we'll end up doing is there will be some communication given to the manufacturers who have full hotspots right now on exactly what to load and what to test. We're actually testing it on testnet, as you probably already know. So that kind of communication and directive will be provided once we are confident that it's not going to halt the chain and not affect POC at all.
Okay, so I think it's important that the mock understand this, and that we, this is a technical point we need to make certain does not fall over because we need to make certain they're ready and that they attest that they are at the very least. So did we answer your question, Sophie?
What I'm hearing is if someone is taking their hardware, if they're taking their full hotspot and making it into a light hotspot, it does not require a new audit. If it is a light hotspot from scratch, it does.
Well, as long as they don't make any changes to their full hotspot, like no hardware changes, no product model changes, no antenna changes, it's purely they just, they're going to take their full hotspots that they have been shipping preloaded with full miner, and in the future, full miner is deprecated, so it's going to ship with light miner. I don't think it needs an audit. I'm okay with that.
Okay, so
it's a new product, it's a new model number, new enclosure, all those types of things. Then they trigger an audit.
I agree. I also, is Lewis in here? So I have three items from Lewis that are going to be added to the light hotspot audit. One of them is that we want them to prove that they can update. The other is that apparently the key is slightly different with the ECC, the way that that's going to be accessed. So the process changes a little bit. Maybe it's not different, but the process to test it changes a little bit. And there's a third thing, which I don't remember right now.
Just one question to the ones that understand more of this technical part, but with such a radical firmware change of how the device works, don't we have to do any security tests on it, or it's assumed that part will continue exactly the same?
It's essentially the same. You know, it may be a different process that's talking to the chip or to the secure module. But if they've already passed regular audit for full hotspot, that covers generally the security model. And part of that audit and the security behind that is such that even if you change the firmware out, you couldn't get at the key. So that it's a good question, but I think it's pretty covered under the original audit.
Because my original concern was because of being such a total makeover of the software part. But if that's covered, as long as Brad said, no hardware change that violates what was defined.
Yeah, there's no security hole. Jeremy's obviously absolutely correct. There's a functional risk with the firmware update. Like, so the manufacturers have to rebuild their firmware to work with the Rust container of Lightminer and get that to work. And so I think it's a question of, the manufacturers have a responsibility to do their own firmware testing and quality testing before they release that firmware update to all their units that are out there. Is there really a necessity for the MOC to re-audit it? No, because there's no security gap. But from a consumer perspective, I think we need to, again, encourage all the manufacturers to really test this thoroughly so that they don't, firmware update a bunch of their customers into something that doesn't perform as well.
And one thing, because one of my concerns is not properly the consumer part, but stability of the network. Maybe we don't require us to audit the devices, but some kind of evidence of the list of the tests they must show us they all did, so that they can provide that self-audit with the details to us before even considering pushing that to the network. Of course, if it's one of the smaller manufacturers, I'm not as concerned. It won't make such a dent in the stability, but imagine one of the big ones suddenly getting all their fleet down. That makes a dent in the network stability.
Yeah, this is a risk that's even with the existing miner. Whenever Helium makes a new update to the miner, a lot of manufacturers will rebuild it. Many, in fact, almost all will now use the Docker container. This could happen even on a regular Docker update. This is a little bit more risky, that's true. I'm a bit comfortable with the self-audit. I think it's a little bit more than just let things go. I think we do need to bring it to their attention at least and have them acknowledge, just so that there's no one slipping under the cracks, that, hey, what is your plan for transferring over to the light hotspot? Have you even seen the Rust thing and how you guys are going to deploy it? We just would like to see a self-audit from this perspective. But that does mean that someone's going to write up this questionnaire.
Yeah, so I think we need Lewis to really do a detailed migration, kind of document and self-test expectations.
Sophie, what's your feeling? Do you think Lewis could, if we shouldered him with that and just say, here, the mock kind of needs this, can you write up something that we can propose?
Yeah, he told me, well, we have talked about an addition to the document, the hardware audit document that I have. I made a light audit document that's meant to go to manufacturers so they can self-audit before they send them. And I'm waiting for Lewis to make a few minor changes to that.
So I'm going to say,
this is a migration document. This is if you're a full miner, customer, this is your migration document to get the thing moved to miner light.
I can work with Lewis on that although I know that he is extremely busy right now.
Sure. We're not
Oh.
putting a due date on it, but we're putting
Right.
it a to do.
Yeah.
So in the notes here, I'm just writing resolve Sophie to draw up / find light hotspot migration audit self questionnaire. It's horribly.
And just Brad, like what do you think should be on something like that?
Well, so one of my I would hope all the OEMs have sufficient software development teams that they can handle this migration themselves. I mean, that would be the expectation, but it's always good to have somebody who's the resident expert. And I think Lewis and Helium team is to at least give them what I would call a migration guide, which is here's kind of the general update. Here are the things you need to be aware of, right? Maybe gotchas, maybe some configuration stuff that would be device specific. And then, kind of just set an expectation on what they need to do to what their responsibilities are, right? They're going to have to push a firmware update to their fleet. That firmware upgrade will move from full minor to minor light. What is the test, the compliance test after they push the update to make sure we're comfortable it's working properly. Just that kind of stuff. I don't think it's a 10-page document, but it's probably, a page of just from somebody who's the resident expert on,
Got it.
This is what you guys need to go do and the general procedure and maybe the gotchas.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
It's so we're officially just saying we are doing this, by the way, and we're putting it on Sophie until she says no, I can't do it, and then pass it back to us. But we all agree, yes or no, that this is generally a good idea, having this migration doc and just telling manufacturers please self-sign.
Yeah, I think a good deadline to have this would be, we have been doing these monthly mock updates. It looks like we're not doing one for November, but we would want to do one for December and have this a part of it, as well as Coco, maybe if you want to talk about the maker apps.
Right. So the maker apps, haven't received too much feedback from the individual makers. I'm wondering if maybe Christina has gotten some emails from them. But the original plan where we would create sort of a starter app that presented as sort of a shell that was that you can run out of the box included having customers type in their seed phrase, their 12 words. And we've since decided that it was kind of a security hole. And so we are replacing it with a deep link signing from one of the Helium apps. So that is still underway. Got delayed because of a lot of optimization issues we've had to do to the app and the wallet API. But that is still ongoing. So once that's done, I want to maybe ghostwrite an update that Christina can send out that will outline what's changed between the old Maker app version and the new one, and how they can utilize the Helium app to sign transactions, including at Gateway, and sort of make clear what's going to happen if folks fork the Hotspot app. Because I think I saw some makers thinking that they can fork the existing Hotspot app repo and just have everything work out of the box. That's not the case. So we would just want to make that clear.
Yeah, that is an important point thing. I'm writing here in the notes. So just quickly, everyone, it's just a security thing. You can't take the wallet from one app and have it magically appear in an app by another manufacturer. Thing that all the phone makers have wisely done, so that you make a new app and can't steal someone's Helium wallet. But that also means it's very hard to import. What should the mock be doing, Cokes, to make certain that it doesn't fall through? Or is that was just an update?
Yeah, go ahead.
What doesn't fall through? That they are...
That is there something we can do to make them really aware that they need to do this or that they need to hold off? What have they been communicated so far that we can help communicate to them? Is there anything we need to make a decision on regarding the app transition, the upcoming
No.
app transition? Okay.
Not quite. If anything, we might delay the switch over from maybe like early Q1 to middle or later Q1 next year. But under no circumstances should they not do it, because we will kick them off of the Helium app, which means their customers won't be able to onboard anything.
Okay. And
So
Sophie, you
this-
kind of brought that up. I want to make certain we're not dropping something.
I just, Coco, do you, like, we sent out something to all the makers last month, right before Christina joined, as
Mhm.
a, hello, this is coming, you should do it. Should we send out a reminder in December?
Yeah, let's do that reminder along with the update to the Maker app where you use the Helium app to sign transactions. Let's put that all together. And let's also make clear that this is now a requirement for new makers coming on board through the pipeline. Let's make sure they're aware that this is what's being asked of them in addition to all of the other stuff they have to do.
Can I ask you, can you give us some language? Because Christina sends out a sort of canned email once they get started with the hardware audit about onboarding, just where they should go to start creating their app. Because previously we were like, you have to put in a pull request for the Helium app.
They would still have to do that. I think the effort to do that is fairly low. A lot of them know how to do it. And I think the language can be pulled from that email that you sent out.
Okay.
So we can just cull that to be a little bit more precise, given that we know it's going to go in a different direction once the app team is done with their deep linking work.
Got it. So I put that on here that we just we might need to update maybe the HIP 19 checklist to say that, look, you also have to be in charge of your app. We should probably find like a cutoff date and audit, and it's also going to be sort of an audit procedure too. If you think about it, we need to audit their app and make certain that it can onboard, I believe, their gateway.
Yeah, so that would be, they would need to probably invite few members. I'm happy to volunteer to their test flight or Android beta app.
Can I ask a question?
Mhm.
So just an observation is that a number of the current manufacturers of hotspots don't seem necessarily to be Android app developers. Is there a Android app, kind of boutique engineering house that maybe we can reach out to or start to connect with to help these manufacturers with this app? I don't know if you guys have people you've worked with. I know there's some Android, engineering firms out there. Is there any thought along this line, or?
Yeah, there is, although this is actually a question for Mock. Can we recommend someone? Because Hotspotty has been like really, they would like to be recommended.
I would fall short of recommended, but maybe we can facilitate a list of potential Android app developers or contract engineering houses that people can refer to. Yeah, I mean, I just, from my years in industry, there's just some contract firms that I could probably come up with a short list. I don't want to recommend anybody, but it may be something that may be helpful, and it could be an opportunity for some of these outside developers to come in and bring value to the network. I'm just
Brad,
how
what,
many of the current manufacturers actually have their own in-house, Android and Apple app development teams ready to go do this?
So
What
I
do you
want to
think of
add
that?
something real
Sorry.
quick.
go ahead,
The
Coach.
app is developed in React Native, which is actually a very easy to use language that can cross compile into for iOS and Android. So they only have to make the app one time and maybe a couple of tweaks just to satisfy some of the more native requirements of each platform. But the point is right in that they need to look for React Native engineers, which is kind of a little bit more specialized and it's just pure Android, because they won't get very far just servicing half of the platform, basically. yeah, I think it would be good to get a list of potential engineers that would be willing to provide React Native services. And Hotspot is definitely one of them. I think I heard from another one that I can't quite remember right now.
So I have a general question.
Go ahead.
Like, considering that the firmware and Docker and these other things are even more esoteric, and yet we don't recommend an engineer for that. Is this really something that needs to be done? Are manufacturers really having a hard time finding app developers?
I think recommend is too strong.
Okay.
I'm just suggesting that there, maybe it makes sense to at least have a list of consultants in this area that could be made available to people who are looking for.
I think we can certainly do it, but in the interest of appearing to be impartial, we'd have to open it up. Anybody can apply, and we have to say, look, you want to put your name in this giant.
Yeah,
box.
maybe just a Discord. Is there like a dedicated Discord channel on the Maker Android on the Maker app? Maybe just start that and see where it goes. But I do think it's a little bit different than the original embedded. I think a lot of the hardware-centric companies are a little bit more comfortable with like their DIY Maker stuff that's out there. I mean, it's pretty easy to go do, right? Then maybe doing something in React Native. It's just an observation.
Maybe we can just first poll the manufacturers to see if any of them has any issue. Maybe that's the none problem.
Yeah, we're not, again, I'm not suggesting we take some major, I'm just suggesting maybe if there's a list of consultants that are React consultants that can be out there, we're not going to recommend anybody, just so that if some of the OEMs do need help, that at least they have some starting place of consultants to call. That's all.
We could phrase it, here are the consultants that we are aware of.
Yeah.
I think a channel is a good idea. We started doing that for distributors, which I see Christina put as the next item on the agenda. We started keeping a list of distributors, and I gave up after 2 weeks because the amount of communication from distributors trying to sell their services to me or set up calls with me or harassing me on Discord or whatever. Creates a lot of work.
Yeah, let's just have a channel for app development if it's not there, and then if people are in that space, they can start to participate, and just like everything else.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Cool. Who's going to take it on? Volunteers.
Take on what exactly, Jeremy?
Doing whatever it is we said was going to magically happen. The channel or telling people keep a list. Okay,
we're going to create a channel, and if people, we can let people know, hey, if I think we should let people know, like, hey, you need the reference app from Helium is developed in React Native. If this is a channel to help folks who are going to start down that development path, and if there's outside consultants, whatever. I mean, just some simple like post around the channel being created and why it's there.
Cool.
And then we don't have to maintain lists, and we don't have to recommend anybody, but at least we maybe help the community, help itself if there is a need.
Great. I think we're ready to move on to the next agenda item. And that looks like the 5G manufacturers.
That's just an FYI.
So what is that?
That's just an FYI, so everyone sees who is currently kind of putting in, who is asking for information or starting to talk about 5G. But that's a status, just a update for.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. And just in case everyone is not reading, it's Broan, TPG, GenXCom, Deeper, we've heard from before, and Nebra have all expressed interest in being 5G, at least directly. Yeah. I have, clearly we're gonna, not even an audit ready for that.
Then there's Bobcat.
Sure.
We can add that. Yeah, this is just an FYI.
Okay.
Status.
Yeah, nothing to vote on, but we should all be aware. And I mean, I anticipate the 5G thing, where it's going to be huge. We don't even have any technical docs around it yet. I don't even think the blockchain's got anything about proof of concept there. Sorry, proof of coverage.
Well, they haven't even defined a 5G data credit yet, right? Because if you can't use DCs for 5G, because then each 5G, each gigabyte of 5G is going to cost you $416.60. So that's just dumb. So.
Right. No, there's so
You know.
many things community we're going to need HIPs and such to find out how that's technically going to happen. So no need to go into that. I'm getting a little lost in this doc here about what's up on the agenda. I think we've sort of made a mess of it. Sorry. Is there anything else left to work on?
There's a couple things here. Here, let me put a bullet points. Maybe we could talk about all of them at the same time, kind of just decide
Yeah.
which ones we want to actually talk about. So
Absolutely.
you go ahead, Jeremy.
So what you're highlighting?
Yeah, I am.
Cool. All right. My goodness. So I guess, so Sophie brought this up. Should we allow Nebra to deliver their new product while the previous buyers have not received them?
Is this a mock? Is this something that we should even be discussing here?
That sounds like the consumer protection sort of thing. Like, are they changing their hardware?
Yes.
Are they proposing new? They are changing. Okay, they're going to create a new product and they're going to sell it.
They have submitted HIP-19 proposal for, I think, 3 new products. Maybe one is 5G and one is light, and one is a new full hotspot, or there's 1 or 2 new full hotspots.
They're moving away from a China purchased LoRaWAN concentrator card, and they're designing their own.
Well, I mean, that one's pretty easy. You change the hardware, new audit required.
But there's two questions, right? One is their new hardware all has to go through audit. There's no question. Let's assume that their new hardware passes audit, and so we would approve it. In theory, they'll be able to sell the new hardware before they fulfill all the pending orders on their original product. I think that's the root of the question.
Right.
That's what's been asked in community, yes.
Yep. So I think if we just rely on that ethics and expectations document, I think I remember something in there saying like, hey, have you delivered XYZ in some certain time? And if they haven't done that, like, okay, well, if they're not meeting the ethics and expectations, then we can't onboard we can't let them do the next thing.
Okay, that sounds good. I think we can move on and just make sure that there's something in the ethics document. What do you think, Jeremy?
Just want to make certain we're just being completely consistent, right? Is it a question where we're saying they can go ahead basically because we've never told anybody they can't sell a new product? I think part of the question here is, are they offering customers who have technically ordered the old unit a chance to convert to the new one? Do we care if they offer that or not? Obviously I'd like them to, but I can't force them to. I do want to recognize if we force them to do something, we just want to make certain it's consistent. If we force them to offer new users the new hardware, technically that's like they bought one hardware, they saw it on the website, they saw the picture of it, they decided to buy that. If they receive something else, and we force Nebra to do that, could be a problem too, right? That's a bait and switch sort of thing. So I don't want to enter any territory where we force them to do something that's actually illegal.
I think we shouldn't force them. We cannot use the ethics as a contract or a binding contract, but we should at least recommend, yes, and that if they have a huge number of open unfulfilled orders, they give the customers or reach a way to give the customers the possibility to convert.
And my question is,
only
isn't this just patently obvious to any manufacturer who wants to keep customers that, like, if you deliver new orders, new people, and keep the old ones in the dark, that they're going to get unhappy? I think absolutely we can just say, look, we think people will get mad unless you offer them the ability to get the new unit. I think Syncrobit had something like this, if I recall. So it has happened where something new has come up and the manufacturer has given all of their customers who've had back orders a chance to switch. So yes, I approve of us sending, here's what we expect, but we recognize it has no teeth. Is everybody cool with that? Is it still unclear? All right. Just moving on. On the KYC process, this is from Christina. should we add a requirement to disclose partners? Kristen, you want to quickly describe?
Yeah, so just when going through like the KYC process, we don't currently have anything in the interest of disclosure of whether or not two manufacturers are working together or if they have long-term partners. Do we care about anything like that? Do we want to add that to part of the process, just in the interest of like disclosure?
I would like to see that. Sure. What if some gaming partners are part of helping develop a new gateway?
I think there's actually a bigger issue which we should tackle is I think I don't know, but a lot of the KYC documents are not necessarily published. And I did hear from Scott that DY would be cool if we actually publish those and told manufacturers, look, all your KYC information is going to become public, whatever you submit under KYC, because the mock is not under NDA. Technically, you didn't sign it with us. So I think that's an even bigger
Yeah,
thing for
and
us to decide to make it
Mhm.
clear.
And I'm
And
actually
then add
working
this.
on putting together like a document that would be kind of like a public facing directory of all of the manufacturers with the public information for like that purpose of disclosure. It's not ready quite yet, but that's kind of the idea behind it, is that, yeah, we want to have more public facing information so that people can make, informed decisions.
Yeah. So I'm definitely all for it. There's things to hammer out, like what constitutes a partner. People will weasel in and out of that. We don't nail it down. Just be aware of these tiny nits that can get in the way. Anybody have any objections to adding this requirement? Would we say it's unanimously passed that we're okay adding this?
Well,
Awesome.
so what
Go, Brad.
I think it should, I think everything that as much should be disclosed as possible. I think we should again encourage applicants to disclose, but maybe allow them maybe have them, like release it. Like there's a check that says, yes, I agree that this can be publicly disclosed. That would be my only comment. Like there may be there may be some things that they don't want to disclose for good reason, that the MOC needs to look at and kind of decide, like there's a reason that can't be disclosed that is not detrimental to
I can give you a perfect example. I've noticed in some of the KYC docs we have pictures of passports of the officers.
Yes.
That's personal information. They might object to.
So I just think that there needs to be like, we encourage them to disclose as much as possible, but there's some things in KYC that probably maybe like that is a great example. It shouldn't be disclosed, and then they just have to be, indicate on the thing when they make their application or whatever, like, hey, this is going to be disclosed, and they approve it. It's just to make sure you kind of close that loop, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm just worried about them
particularly-
saying nothing gets disclosed.
Yeah, because if there is personal information and one of the manufacturers is from Europe, they must give explicit permission under GDPR for that to be published.
Yeah, and also I think the manufacturer should disclose everything to the DY, in their application, and then there's maybe some, like I said, there's probably a subset of that can be publicly disclosed, but maybe some things that can't, and there just has to be an exchange between the two parties to align on that.
I also just, the conversation about the publicly facing thing that Christine is putting together doesn't have stuff like driver's licenses. The personal information would be the incorporation certificate, which should be publicly available, even in Europe. So I don't think that we were talking, or that Scott was talking about putting out driver's licenses and passports and
No.
Yeah.
Okay, that helps.
Yeah, no, the idea is just to have like what's already publicly available, but just all in one place so that everybody can easily find it.
Sure.
Oh, sure. I think that's totally fine. Okay, moving on to the next one. Pre-orders. What does that mean?
So that was something that I had added in there about, I think we had talked a little bit about this in Discord chat, but just to kind of like recap, a decision on whether or not people who have already been manufacturers and released a product, whether or not they're allowed to sell pre-sales or like pre-orders. So this wouldn't necessarily be for somebody who's new, it'd be for somebody who is already like a part of it or already has like a model for sale.
But still, you're talking about taking pre-orders before the device passing the audit. Is that it?
That was the question that was presented.
It's again a branding problem. It's that we are saying that I got this feedback like directly from a lot of community members that we are saying that we approved, for example, deeper network, but not the product itself. And I think that's just an immediate switch that we can make is we didn't approve the manufacturer, we approved the manufacturer's product.
Yeah, well, and I would be more specific here, right? So I believe on any of the FCC docs, they have to list the model number. So we're approving model numbers. So I think when a new application comes in, the manufacturer needs to be specific on which model number or numbers, like if they have an EU version and a US version, that they're submitting for approval.
Yeah, I think we've tried to enumerate that we only approve models for ordering and sales. We do start out the process by saying a manufacturer looks legitimate enough to continue the process, but we're not approving them. When they get approval at that step, they're not necessarily approved to take pre-orders. They're only allowed to do pre-orders for specific models. Does that make that clear?
It does, and I am going to suggest that we add to the HIP 19 proposal a spot for model number.
Yeah, and
Sure.
in our announcements, for instance, we always announce that the MOC has approved this company and that company. Maybe we should work on, although we always say to the community, it's not the vendor, it's the devices. But then in our announcements, we mentioned the name. We might start thinking about when we announce the vendors, instead of announcing the vendors that were approved, we announced the models that were approved. Maybe that helps to clear that confusion that people get.
I did try to do that in the previous announcements. When I did them, you'd notice I said the MOC has approved models or unit hotspots from so-and-so to be sold or sold. And then there was some confusion like, oh, Jeremy, just shorten it just to say the manufacturer. So I'm fully open to reopening that, saying, look, it really is the units that we approve. And I think that would certainly help clear things up. But I don't know if that's any different from what we've done.
I've been I did the last communication and I basically copied the structure from a previous one and I put the names, and I was addressed by people asking, it's the manufacturer that your MOC has approved, and I said, no, the MOC audits devices. Of course, we put in the announcements the name because it's the same maker key for all their devices. But basically, we are approving that manufacturer to sell the audited and approved models. But yeah, I think if we are more transparent about which models are approved, even in the tracker somehow, we keep a field for, okay, RAC has these models approved. Bobcat, Nebra, Synchro, etc. The models that are already approved, it will help us keep track of that. Of course, this raises a thing. Models might have different model numbers for different geographies. And that would allow us also to cross-check with the certifications they have if we want to go ever want to go into that detail. It gives us more information.
I think we're pretty solid there. Is that make sense, Christina? Did we resolve exactly what your question was? I know.
Yeah, I think
yes.
that's
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I don't think it's any different from what we've already had. It's just clarification.
Mm-hmm.
All right. This next one, of course, is yours too, about the status tracker. Should it have a distributors tab?
Yeah, so we have that one currently. It's the public facing. There's a distributor tab that is not like currently being updated. So should we hide it? What are the thoughts on that?
No. I mean, there's a clear need in the community. They say, all right, so and so is approved as a manufacturer. How do I get their hotspots? Well, there appear to be scam websites and legitimate websites, and people are constantly trying to find out whether a specific site is legitimate or not. And this often boils down to a distributor being authorized by the manufacturer or not. We could push this two ways. We can say, look, you go to the manufacturer's website and then they will list the distributors. That would be far easier for us to do, less headache than maintaining that distributors tab. I would rather go that way than just put even more load on Christina or someone to keep maintaining that. But welcome to like counter arguments.
I think it's the manufacturers that authorize their reseller channels, whatever those are. And I think part of the ethics doc should be, I think it's already there, that the approved manufacturer should keep on their website a current list of their authorized resellers and distributors. Many of you have this already. But I don't, it's again, one of these things like, how would the MOC police this and maintain it? It's just not, I don't think it's plausible.
I don't think it'd be a matter of policing, but it just is a matter of paperwork and updating.
Yeah, but even maintaining, like, what if we put a distributor up there and then they get defranchised? So now we are sending somebody to a distributor that the manufacturer no longer works with. Like, I'm of the opinion that the ownership is with the manufacturers to control their reseller and distribution channel, and they just need to disclose it.
Yeah, that'd be my vote. Unless there's any objections.
My vote as well. We already have in the Helium site the list of the channels for contact the community, their Discord servers, whatever. People go there and inform themselves. If we start keeping up a list, it will go to hundreds, thousands soon, and it becomes totally unmanageable.
Christina, is this doable from your side, or is it like
the vote is good for me to then hide that and take that off of like the public facing tracker?
Yeah. Also, I just want to formally poll. Brad said yes. Philippe said yes.
Yes.
Nick, I saw you were saying yes. Patrick,
Yes.
you're saying yes. Sophie, you are no video, so you're going to say yes.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay, I say yes. That's a unanimous one. Great. And this last one I put in here, which we've really talked to death, but I am noticing perhaps one thing that we can solve some of the community's anger about manufacturers is just noticing that a lot of them are just really, it's not even, it's pretty wise community members who are out there who are watching people buy hotspots. They've been around. I think they just have issues sometimes when a manufacturer is listed on the Helium Inc. site. It seems to endorse not just approval, but like a seal.
Yeah.
Recommendation.
There's something
Yeah,
about that. It's like recommendation,
I've
and
seen
that's
that
what they're
too,
fighting
yes.
with. And so if we can think in the long term about maybe asking that maybe it's time for it to not be on the Helium website. There's just too many manufacturers. We're asking Helium's guidance on this, that there's one thing to have a list of things that are approved, but it's quite another thing to have endorsements. And a lot of people just anger that it looks like an endorsement.
I agree with that.
And that is really maybe the biggest thing we can do to help solve some of this, but it is
where
not
would
easy
we
to solve.
list it? For a
I don't
newcomer
know.
that wants to buy a Helium hotspot, we must have a
Yeah.
way to provide them at least a list of all the approved models for him to, because if we remove that information, then we are creating a bigger problem. They have no way to do due diligence. They have no way to get more informed. Maybe not in the Helium Inc. Site, agree, but we must have an easy way for them to find all the available approved models.
It may not be time to do this, but I'm recognizing that's the one thing they really fight against is they just say, why is it listed there? We know this manufacturer is technically competent, but just horrible. It's like you're ruining the Helium name and all of that. So I don't think there's any way we can resolve anything about this now. But if we can think of this as a theme, as some brainstorming.
I've been thinking about the community quality seal and having an area where all the all the vendors, all the makers are reviewed by the community, and that will be more important when that is up and running. and it has the information of all the makers and all the models, regardless of their evaluation, then we can remove it from the Helium site. We should even remove it from the Helium site. Okay, anyone that wants to buy hotspot has to go through there. It immediately receives the input from the community, so they cannot claim to not be informed. And then it would be a great moment to do it. Right now, I think we have no other option than
Yeah.
keep it
No,
as it
I
is.
think so. But just recognize that when people are angry, this is really kind of what they're angry about. They're well informed, and they say, yeah, we recognize you guys are just a technical standards body. You can approve or disapprove onboarding. But they also see that as much as you want to be distanced from being consumer protection, the way it's seen outside is very much consumer protection. And that's where the sore point is. So
I
I
just
don't think
want
we have
to
to do
add
as much.
an
Go ahead,
update.
Sophie.
I just want to add an update about that page, that /mine page. The document that Christina and Scott are working on that is going to have the KYC information is, I think the plan is to replace the /mine page with that information so that all manufacturers are represented rather than just a few, which makes it look like we're endorsing, that Helium is endorsing 7 or 8 manufacturers over the 50 or 60 or so that are in the network.
Yeah, and I mean, it's going to be hard for them to incorporate the artwork. Like they did such a good job initially of having each manufacturer submit some like 3D rendered thing, and they incorporate it and flatten into that list. You know, I think even Helium Inc. would love some sort of change, but I'll leave it to Cokes to chime in about that. I don't think we need to panic and say we're doing anything right now, because that's just be too much work. But definitely approve of that in the long run. We are officially like 15 minutes over, but we did start a little late. If anyone wants to add things, I think now's the time to really bring it up. Of course, we always have the channel open.
Nope, I got to boogie, guys. Thanks.
Cool. Thanks, Nick.
Yep.
Any other votes we're expecting soon?
Yeah,
Sophie?
there are several I'm not going to list them all. There's about 8 or 9 that are in the mix. All of them, we are waiting for radio certifications.
Okay.
So I think Christina probably has a list. Christina, I emailed you a list just before this meeting. It doesn't, we can talk about this in the channel because we're not ready to vote yet. But, and next week, I believe that we're going to just let those manufacturers know that it's a slow week because of Thanksgiving in the United States.
American Thanksgiving, we should say.
Yeah.
American Thanksgiving.
Yeah, in the United States. Yep.
Or yeah, United States one. Okay. Thanks, everyone. We managed to talk through it and try to keep on the channel. I try to do that, but I'm going to try to be more of we got to get things done too. Appreciate everyone's trying to move things forward. I don't want things to get too slow. And with that, I think we're done for this meeting. I'll see you guys next time.
Thanks,
Thank you
everybody.
very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.